Yeah. You're listening to Autodesk's Digital Builder Podcast, a show that inspires construction professionals to innovate and use technology to improve how they build our world. I'm Eric Thomas, and I've been working in construction for nearly a decade. And now I have the privilege to sit down with industry trailblazers to hear how they're solving construction's biggest challenges and redefining the future of the built environment. Welcome back to Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. We are live at Autodesk University. It is the first day of the event, and I am excited. We're at the tail end of the expo hours, but I am joined by Rexine Jones, the Chief Financial and Information Officer from Hansen Yuncken. Today, we're going to talk about all things finance, all things information technology. We're going to have a good time. Rexine, how are you doing so far today?
Yeah, pretty good. Thanks, Eric. It's been an amazing conference and super excited by what I've seen today. Some really inspirational thoughts, and I'm looking forward to the next couple of days together.
It's a real privilege to spend time hanging out here at AU. I mean, I'm fortunate. Maybe I'm a little biased. I happen to work at Autodesk, but it's such a cool convergence of manufacturing, construction, media and entertainment, just a lot of neat stuff. So we're going to jump in. But before we get started, I have a question for you that I didn't tell you I was going to ask. So feel free to get ready for this one. But I'm asking everybody, what are you listening to right now? What's on your playlist? Anything particular that you're excited to? I'm putting together a digital builder playlist. So if there's any particular music that you're fired up right now, I'd like to hear about it.
So my background is music. I went to the Conservatorium of Sydney for my high school. So it's a bit of a range.
Question then.
Yeah. Loving at the moment Cat Empire. Some really classic Cat Empire.
Okay.
At the same time, there's a French version of a song which is played by Phase. Yeah. So I'm a bit into Phase and a bit into the old Cat Empire at the moment.
All right. Well, we'll have to add those to the playlist. I appreciate you rolling with that one since it was a bit of a surprise. But let's roll into construction. That's what we're here to talk about today. So your role at Hansen Yuncken, it covers both finance, information, technology. Can you give an overview of the day in the life? Like what's it like in your role and what do you think about on the daily?
So day in the life, I sort of spoke about that last week when I was in the office and I felt like I was doing mental gymnastics in 30-minute blocks. But no, look, a day in the life is really about the two bookends that I have. And the financial bookends are really made of marble. They're solid, they're strong, they're there, they don't move, they're the right numbers, and everyone's clear about which direction we're heading and why. And my other bookend is the one that's fun. It's paper mache. It moves with the business. I get to talk to really cool people and partners. We call it the technology family, and that family is made up of people within the business, both on the project, both within my team, both functionally, and also our supporters, our partners. One being Autodesk. Our Autodesk family is the Hansen Yuncken family.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. And I've got some partnership questions for you coming up here in a little bit. So I'm excited to dig in a bit deeper. But it sounds like there is no day in the life. It's basically whatever comes at you, you just kind of react to in the moment.
Pretty much. You've got the standard month-end reporting and quarter-end and year-end. So they drive the theme. But underlying is really the daily look at the operations and how does technology really make that efficient. And then as you hear those stories and you talk to those people that are really living what technology can do for us, you bring that value and all of those levers back into the finance. And so it's really fun, it's really cool, and it's super energizing to hear what's happening on site and then watching the financials deliver that value back.
I like that. And I'd like to go a little bit deeper into that as well. Can you tell me a bit more about the relationship between the finance side and that information and technology side? Like, how do those go hand in hand, and how do you make choices while considering both aspects? I mean, you've got a wide scope under your purview, both in the finance and technology world, and I'm interested to hear a bit more about it.
Look, they do go hand in hand because both really need that data environment, right? We really need strong architecture where we can can look at what's happening in the business and start to see around corners. So if you think about technology, it's really driving how you're going to get around the corner. And the numbers are really saying, what do you need to do to get around the corner, or what should you be looking out for? And so if you've got this platform of technology supported by strong architecture, and of course we all know data is never as clean as we want it, but as long as you've got, reasonable data, then what we're doing is using the data to pull the levers to see around the corner, and the technology really comes underneath and props it up and gives it that strength to get the success. Ultimately, each of those levers is managed by people. And so what we try to do then is bring the value back through the financials and through cash. Cash is king. Cash pays for everything that we do. But really get that return on investment. And when I say that, I'm thinking numbers, but the reality is I'm not looking for value in terms of financial value. I'm looking for value for my staff, the people on the project, to get out from behind the desk, to walk around, to talk to people, to hear things, to mitigate risk, and to really understand how they can promote things and get change. Because ultimately the two bookends that I have is really quite cool, because if everyone follows process, even to 80-20 kind of rule, and we've got good governance, which I know in HY we're certainly getting stronger at, then I can create this space in the middle where everyone can have entrepreneurial thinking. And we don't self-perform work. So really the entrepreneurial thinking is my passion for the business, to create that space so they can mitigate risks, hear them as they're walking around, get out from behind the desk, and create the opportunities that make the business a success, right? Yeah. Because that success allows me to invest in new ideas, new technology, new things for everyone on site. And what's new today is BAU in 2 years' time. And so generating that wealth today to reinvest for tomorrow's BAU is the ultimate linkage of that common in data environment with strong architecture, great technology and partnership for the people on site who wear the boots on the ground that we're in service of, to make their life just hum, really.
I love that. I have a lot of thoughts, but first, could you define BAU for those who might not be familiar?
Oh, sorry. BAU is business as usual.
Perfect. Thank you. First off, I'm going to steal that around the corner looking with technology from you. I will attribute it to you, but I love that analogy. It's wonderful because it's one of those factors that we do have a semblance of control over in an industry where most things we do not. And it's such an interesting look at how we leverage technology to look through the looking glass, or however you want to describe it. But the other aspect that you're getting into, as far as just the people behind it. I mean, Digital Builder, this is obviously a construction podcast, but I tell everybody this is a podcast about people. And that's the most interesting aspect of it, because we have to humanize what we're doing, even when we're talking about profit margins and technology and everything else, because those are the ones that are actually out there making a difference and using the tools we're choosing to bring in and driving the profit. It's not the other way around. I think some folks sometimes lose sight of that. So I love the way that you think about this. It's a really cool framing.
I mean, I love the fact that we've got people out there that do that, right? I mean, that's the ultimate. And really, we had this work session just the other week, and you think a lot of things along a journey, right, of a couple of years, and where are we heading next, and what does it look like, and what do we need? And I had this real aha moment. An aha moment was that what really underpins everyone is the quality of training and actually that entrepreneurial thinking that you can help people progress as they develop. And I totally agree. I totally agree with what you just said. It's exciting.
Yeah, the training piece is also key too, because how do you expect somebody to leverage something that they may have never seen before if they're either fresh out of school or not? There's so much mapped into successfully using the tools and the technology and the way that the company would like them to and expect them to. And if you've never really truly informed them of that, it's very easy to make mistakes. And now you're getting into data quality and all kinds of other issues that without that emphasis are really hard to navigate and manage. But this kind of jumps into the next question I have for you. I'm obviously construction is notoriously narrow on the profit margins. And I'm curious, how do you manage and balance that aspect of the business when there are so many risks to consider to ensure that the company stays and maintains profitability?
That's quite a tricky question, to be honest.
The big one. Tell us all how to make our businesses successful. I realize that's a little loaded, but I'd love your take on it as far as just, from the seat of the finance office. How do you think about this narrow margin? Like, there is a stress tied to it. There's a lot of risk. Like, what keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night is how we tender today.
You're speaking my language as a formal tender and proposal manager.
But how do we take what we're experiencing in today's projects and feed that back to the tender in real time? How do we keep the people who are tendering connected with the project that we're building? I had a project a couple of years ago, and I walked into a PMR. I was just visiting. I thought I'd, drop in and say hi to everyone and hear how we were going on our first PMR. And the project manager says, I need to move my margin by $1 million AUD. And I was like,
Okay.
okay, sure.
Yeah, I'll be
Let's
right
talk
back.
about
Yeah,
that.
napkin math. It's all good.
And he spoke about the fact that he couldn't fit the Manitou on a platform of a train station. And I said, wait a second, the estimator's just out here. We just finished the tender. I'll just bring him in. And he had an idea on how he'd tendered the job. And the other guy didn't have that idea. And that is part of that entrepreneurial thinking that I speak about with my bookends, right? And I think that's the bit that keeps me awake at night, because you're tendering today for a project that you may not finish for 18 months' time. And I think it compounds, because even in 18 months' time, the people who are on that job are using the technology that's 18 months old now.
Yeah.
And so how do you train them on an ongoing basis in bite-sized chunks to get them, match fit for that next project, which is going to be on the next level of technology? Because if we're true to form, we've reinvested again and we've taken that next step change and it's embedded in the business already. And that's probably what keeps me awake at night.
It's a reasonable concern. I remember being in the seat as the proposal or tender manager and chasing a project executive who's already on an active project, asking them to write the technical narrative for a project we may or may not win or won't start for 18 months. Are we certain that he's going to be staffed on that project? Hopefully, because the continuity that you're pointing out right now between the estimate and the execution, there's a gap there. And if nobody has that conversation, that's when you go, okay, well, we need a change order. How on earth are we going to do this? Because nobody ever told them. And it's very burdensome at times. And there's a reason why I don't do it anymore, to be honest. It was a stressful role. But I also am just, excited to be on the technology side of that conversation. But the closing the loop from the knowledge learned from a project and applying that to future projects, that is so hard, especially for very large organizations. And I think you're right. Technology is one of the tools that we have to close that gap, but we have to be really intentional in how we deploy that tool.
Yeah, I think definitely your words of being intentional about how we deploy the tool and making sure you've got sponsorship all the way through the organization, right? I mean, I like to zipper up, right? You zipper up the team from the bottom of the organization all the way through, because if I'm hearing it at my level, it's been said 3, 4, 5 months ago, right?
Yeah.
It's a little bit delayed. But if you're zippered up and that connection across the functional teams, the operational technology and the projects, we're hearing it real time. And so what I like to do is get my operational technologists every annual cycle to go and sit down with all of our project people and all of our design people individually, so they've all free voice, and we say nothing. Like, we just give everyone a really solid listening to.
I love that.
And that sets the roadmap for what we do in the next 12 months. My learning from that was, it was very good to get this clear roadmap. What are the sprints? What are not? And actually progress it and get that self-satisfaction. But the real reality was, we went back 12 months later and there was no conversation about technology. The conversation was, can you help me do other things? Can you help me in quality? can you help me in safety? You build the rapport and the relationship, and you become known that you're going to deliver what you do. And I think that absolute respect of being in service of the projects is really, really important.
There's an incredible underlying culture conversation that you're talking about here in making sure people know that you actually want their knowledge and their feedback and their perspective. Because when you do deploy technology, if you don't listen to some degree, and of course, a large general contractor, it's not a democratic organization in full. There is a top-down decision-making that's happening. But those decisions need to be informed by the people that are actually out doing the work. In the moment that you misstep on that, that's when people start going, I don't like this new tool. I don't even understand why we're using this new tool. This new tool makes me take 10 minutes longer to do this thing. And it used to be so easy, and I write it on my paper. And why are we doing this? And that's toxic. And you don't get a chance to make a first impression a second time. And it's really cool to hear that listening tour that you went on and that culture baseline has had that impact, because then you move past it. Now, like you said, you're not digging in on technology. Now it's like, where are the problems? And whether it's a technology change or a process change or something else, you're there to address it. You're not just fighting it because they don't want to use the new tool that you brought out. So that's awesome. You're doing some cool stuff.
Yeah, it is cool. And I have to credit a few people, to be honest, Eric. I mean, it's the people on the ground, it's the people on the project, it's the relationships that they build, and it is absolutely the Hansen Yuncken culture. We consider ourselves to be a family, and to that end, the partners that we have on a technology basis, and the team at Autodesk that support us, they are our family, right? They come to our strategy days. When they come to our projects, and they come often, they have their own Hansen Yuncken hat, and it's got their name on it, and they're not different. They're the same as us.
Yeah.
And they can have the conversations with anyone, because people, they don't care who you are. All they care about is the fact that you're there to talk to them and help them. And if you're wearing the same hat and you've got boots that go on the ground, they're happy to get support from anyone. And I think that partnership that we have with a few of our key providers, of which Autodesk is one. Look, I couldn't be more privileged, to be honest. I really do feel privileged to have my own team and the whole of my family to support our projects.
I'm really happy to hear that, both just because, I happen to work at Autodesk, but it's bigger than that, because the partnership aspect of this, regardless of which companies are working together, are so instrumentally critical to the success of both parties, both sides. This is a two-way relationship. And I think the technology companies that are doing this well understand this deeply, because they're not simply a vendor of software. We're not here just to sell you stuff. There's an opportunity to move the industry forward. And this is a conversation that isn't just one organization or one company. This is an entire industry where we all have to work together, because everybody's facing the same challenges. The problems that you're talking about and what we're talking about today are not surprising to anybody. It's a matter of, how do we leverage and engage those tools in a way to move the industry and these projects and the people doing the work forward? And there's a good way and a tactful way to do that. And there's a not as smooth fashion where, maybe a little bit more like a dictatorship, where we go, here's your technology, go use it. Why isn't this done? And you'll be unsurprised when folks start leaving your organization to go work at one that is a little bit more equitable in how they have those conversations.
It's interesting, right? If I go back a bit, and I think the best part about a partner is where they actually tell you their honest thoughts. So everyone at my table has an open voice,
Yeah.
and everyone knows that, and we're respectful of anyone that is sitting at that table. And so I think that mutual value there is there. I also like the fact that the key suppliers that we have, that we really consider part of our family, they've set out their stall. They know their strategy. They know what they want to deliver in the market. They know where they want to grow. And they know where they don't want to grow. And that part where they don't want to grow, that is so critical. So for us, knowing that, and then allowing connection and conversation with another partner, that becomes so powerful when you've got two partners at the table and yourselves, and you're really looking at how you want to use technology to drive corners, to see what's happening around the bend. Because as I said, we don't self-perform. So really all I'm doing is managing risk and creating opportunities. And I think that's where it becomes really quite important to know what your stall is, for us to know what our stall is and where we want to go, and then to have that interlinkage between multiple software providers, because that is the power of the architecture, right? That's the power of technology, is to create that data flow, so that people do get efficiencies, so they can get out from behind their desks and go out and walk the site, right?
I love that, because everything you're saying right now, it just makes sense. And it's easy to talk about when you and I are sitting here on the stage and you go, hey, we're creating this ecosystem. It takes real work to create that environment where folks feel comfortable and confident to share that and be as transparent as is necessary to move the needle forward. But I think just by, laying that stake in the ground and saying, we're here to do this and this is why, people start to understand. And it might take some time if the organizations and the partnerships you have set up right now don't necessarily operate in that fashion, but it's an attainable thing, especially when everybody realizes that the best interests of everybody who are playing a role here really do matter and are coming together. And so that kind of leads me into a little bit more of a specific technology question. So, like, we're talking about the broader ecosystem and the partnerships that roll in here, but I want to hear a little bit more about how you make your technology choices to ensure that they do deliver an ROI for the organization. Like, what do those conversations look like, and what are you thinking about when you're piloting a new tool or hearing about a new feature set that might have come out with an existing platform you're working with? Like, how does that go?
It's tough, and I think ultimately you've got to be open. There is not one right answer to a return on investment or value. You could call it one or the other. The conversation really starts with what's the need, what's the vision. If we can articulate the need and the vision throughout the organisation, then you get that following that you were talking about, and that's what's important for change, right? So I think, what are we talking about? We're talking about how it's going to affect our staff. Is it going to be more work or is it going to be less work? And we all know change at first is more work, right? Who are the key stakeholders? Who actually are going to be the champions? And so we create a list, a register, a Excel spreadsheet likely, of all of our key champions in each part of our technologies, so that we know that if they get a promotion or if they move on, there's a gap there and we're refilling it. So this replacement kind of theory about bringing the old into the new and just making sure it's progressing. So we always look at that. Who's around? Who's excited by it? What's the vision that we want and how are we going to communicate it? In terms of the actual return, I steer away from that conversation. I mean, it excites me if I put on my finance hat, but it doesn't excite an engineer, right? So
yeah. We just want to do our work more efficiently. Like,
that's it.
The number dance behind the scenes isn't as exciting for them. I can understand that. I mean, it's important, but you have to have the right people having that conversation.
Yeah. And look, in Australia, we have a very diverse maturity market. So something like a New South Wales is very mature, but something like a South Australia is quite small and not as mature. So when we consider it, I've got to consider the multiple maturities and how does it play out in all those fashions. And I will say that, when I joined HY, we didn't do that well. We just rolled it out thinking, well, if it works for one, it works for all. But it doesn't. So I think we also consider the speed of change. If you've got a vision, if you've got the people who are excited by it, then we've got the speed of change. And the last thing, before I even go into what's the value I'm creating, is really what is the breadth of my technology adoption at the executive level. We all know we've got people who are saying to me, Rexine, you're not moving fast enough. Why aren't we doing 5D? And I've got people that are saying, I'll use technology, but only if it's of value to the business. And so how do you narrow that so that you've got at least this space that you can continue to progress and take these step out changes, as we sort of spoke about earlier, as the investment. So for me, at the moment, it's really about knowing upfront where we see the value, testing it a lot, and not to completion, because we all know we'd be too late then, But we do spend a lot of time investing in testing in the betas, and we have some amazing staff who work within HY that do that. So you get your testing, you've got your vision, you zip it up all the way through the organisation, and then the last thing is how do you roll it out? And that zippering is kind of cool, right? Because if you're in the middle of summer and everyone's fit, the zipper goes up really easy. But if it's Christmas and, you've had a bit too much to drink and eat and all that festive season, it gets a bit stuck and it gets tight. And so sometimes you've got to go back with the zipper to clear the path to go forward again. And so, when I talk about value, it's really all of those facets come together. I do think ultimately it's going to come down to how do we pass the value of sustainability through technology, and how does the client see spending money today versus tomorrow's return? And I think the value and the ROI has to make its way upstream into the client and downstream into the subcontractor. Once we do that and the value chain is connected, the ROI for us as the holder of the technology, that's where it becomes financially viable.
And we've come right back to people again as far as the core element of this, which I think just really resonates the truth here. But it's a challenge for any technology-driven leader right now, because 10, 15 years ago, like when I originally stepped foot into the construction industry, there wasn't much for us. And it was a lot easier to go, okay, well, what tools are we going to pick? We're going to use our standard Microsoft Office. We got our Primavera. We have a handful of technologies that are for construction. The rest we're forcing into construction, and there's nothing else. I mean, now you look ahead of us, we're sitting here at AU right now, surrounded by vendor booths. And I'd say probably half of these have some relevancy, if not more, to the construction industry. So we have to be intentional about what problems we're trying to solve, what we're trying to accomplish, instead of just going, oh my gosh, these are really cool and interesting, because I'm a technology nerd. It's very easy for me to go, I want to go play with AR and VR and check out all this stuff, and I'm really excited. But we do have to make sure we pump the brakes and say, how do these integrate? How do they play together? How does this move that needle forward? And I really appreciate the perspective from, just the finance side of things, which is not where my brain sits for the most part, in how you kind of do navigate that journey into tools they select.
Yeah, navigating in tools, especially after you consider where we've come from, right? We've got the black swan events of escalation, La Nina. We all compete for the same resources, so we're automatically escalating salaries by the mere fact that you've been offered a role somewhere else and I want you to stay, so I'm going to counter that, right?
Yeah.
And I think it becomes quite challenging as to how does that all come together. Really. And I know I go back to it, but giving everyone a really good listening to, exactly as you said, the guys on the ground, the engineers are telling us what problems they've got. And then the exciting part is all the booths that you've just spoken about, right? What are the solutions out there and how do they come together? And I think sustainability is on everyone's lips, right? There is no one here that's not talking about sustainability. And in Australia, the accounting standards will say, I need to be audited in 2025 on my sustainability roadmap and actually my data. And so that in itself around technology, we're all moving together in that, and an aligned partnership that can take that technology forward is best for everyone. And we're all living in the same ecosystem. We're all friends outside of work and inside of work. And I really get sad when people think we've got to keep the IP to ourselves. And yes, there is some IP we keep to ourselves, but
Of course.
but in general, right, if we share, then the problem's halved, right? We're moving ahead faster. We're supporting our people more. The training's better. The education and that entrepreneurship is better, because even technology needs entrepreneurship. And my biggest players in entrepreneurship are in Tasmania, in Australia, which is down the bottom across the ditch. It's really exciting to see what people can do when you just say, what would you like? How would you like to solve this? And construction is really cool in the timing of that, because people are on projects for 18 months. You can almost lead them to, we'll help you through this next phase, but almost step over it and tell me what's next.
Yeah.
And we had that just recently. So look, we're saving on average about $80 to $100,000 in AUD on printing, just with a planning desk. It cost me $15,000 to buy, and I don't have to print our plans anymore. So it's so cool. It just really is exciting.
There's so many tools that we can choose now, and I'm just grateful to get your perspective on how you kind of navigate that, because it is a difficult one. I have one question for you. When we met originally, we talked about AI a little bit, and I want to jump into this and just hear your perspective as, CFO and information officer. What's your take on AI right now? How is your company leveraging it? And what do you see the role of this tool playing in the construction industry, the next 5 to 10 years? Like, it's the buzz. Everybody's talking about it. It's all over all the vendor booths that I'm looking at right now. Like, tell me what you feel.
Is it AI or is it Clippy? I'm just not sure anymore.
No more Clippy. Although I heard that there's an AI Clippy coming, and I just shuddered because I remember every time you open up Word, it goes, "Would you like to write a cover letter?" I go, "No, I would not. Please go away."
Look, AI for us, we're really just stepping into it. I don't know what I'm about to say, how people might feel about it, but AI for me is a great tool in taking history and collating it and bringing it to today. And that can be amazingly powerful, especially when you think about projects not self-performed, management of risk. Where do I see it right now for us? We're stepping into, looking at what it can do in the tender space. And again, Tasmania has reached out and said, can they do that with us?
I like that. And I also like to hear that there are tools in this realm now, because there's nothing for me when I was still sitting in this seat. The first online portals for submitting proposals of things started coming together, and they were terrible. Like, it actually made submitting many of these proposals worse than it was, and we just had to print out giant binders full of stuff and send them in the mail. So it's encouraging to see that this is moving forward, and there's a way we can apply this intelligence to it in a way that doesn't feel so painful.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in that AI space, the good thing about it is you get to develop your culture, right? There are AI models out there, technologies out there now that self-learn in your culture, in your style. And so it's not just AI, it's your culture. So you really have to be at one with your vision, your mission, and really what the underlying culture of your business is, because that's going to come out in the tool. So I think that's important. The other bit in terms of AI for me is around legal. Right now, construction is well deep in legal needs, and so where do you spend your effort, and how does that sort of balance the workload? And so we're also looking at that legal space and developing a raft of questions where we can review documents and just get the basics out of it, so people are free to do other things. So I think it's going to be exciting. I'm quite looking forward to the finance side of it, as to, how do you price sustainability and AI when you do a tender moving forward?
Yeah.
We talk about technology and the rate of price increase in technology. The world's catching up to that. And I think it will have to catch up a whole lot faster, because the world will have to price itself into what it's going to use, the human entrepreneurial thinking, and how they support that and sustain that. How they balance the grey-haired builder with the new technologist, and then how does the client, support that in terms of a contract. Part of me is thinking it really is just collating history and bringing it forward. And the other part of me is super excited about what it can mean for our staff, for our retention, and for our development and acknowledgement of the people that we're bringing into the business. Kind of balancing both bookends.
I agree with you entirely, though. I mean, we need to be thoughtful as this all moves forward and how we adopt it, because there is risks that come with the tools as they sit right now. I mean, we all hear about ChatGPT and how it hallucinates and makes things up. And so we have to apply the right level of scrutiny and understanding and knowledge of how to use these tools. before we deploy them to everybody and tell them, okay, go use this, without giving them some of these best practices and guidance and understanding of the power and the value and the way to manage and navigate the leverage of these tools. So like there's a lot that goes into it. I think we're just starting to get really deep into, what's possible. And I'm excited to see what comes in the next few years as we figure out how to educate folks and, bring them along for the ride, because we can't have these expectations without setting them up to be successful with the tools that we're giving them, especially when they're so dramatically different from anything they may have used in the past.
Yeah, I skipped over security, but you're so right. I'm sure 80% of the people that are out here on the floor today had the CrowdStrike incident, right? As we did. And so you think about security, and I have one staff member who I think is just amazing, and he's great, and he's passionate about security. It's his life, right? And he is so strong on it. But the business don't understand that. They just want to know why they can't have what they can have. And so you've got to create this balance. And I think that balance, again, comes back to setting the vision on AI and understanding what we're going to use for it, and where do we see the value, or do we not? And we're just going to learn from it as we move through. There's so many applications, but I agree. I think we're just getting into it, and people have got to have freedom of thought for it to really gain traction as to what they're going to do with it, because there's nothing more overbearing sometimes than a whole lot of data, and some people just look at it and go, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, I think Nathan Wood from Spectrum AAC, I quote him on occasion: you can either have your data lake or you can have your data sewer. And if you're not being very intentional about how you're capturing and managing that data, like, keep capturing it. This isn't to say don't capture and manage that data, but like, gosh darn it, you got to stay away from the sewer, because it's not going to give you the actionable guidance that I think most of the organizations are looking for right now.
I like that. I if you don't mind, I'm going to steal that as well.
Yeah, please, Nathan. Thank you for putting that one in my brain some years ago. But I've got one final question for you today, and it's a question I ask everybody. What is one tool that you use on every project or project you're working on, regardless of what that project is?
So many things come to mind, and I work my way down the thinking process, and I end up at people.
People, I like it.
At the end of the day, we're in the service of our people, and that's where the culture and how you support them and how you develop their careers is just so important. Really is.
And I love that perspective. I'm so glad that that's come up consistently through this conversation, because it is easy to get lost in that. We go, okay, we're so focused on our margins. Our project is behind schedule. We see liquidated damages coming in the distance, where we go, oh gosh, if we don't meet that deadline, we've got a problem. And those are all very stressful risks and challenges to manage and navigate. But it's the people that are managing and navigating that, and you got to take care of them. You got to empower them. You've got to train them and teach them and lift them up. And I love that answer. I don't think anybody said people in the 90 or 99 or 100 episodes we've done so far. So I love that. And again, just thank you for joining me here on this episode of Digital Builder. And for everybody out there watching and listening to us right now, if you haven't figured it out, I am Eric Thomas, the host of Digital Builder. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the major podcast players. If you want to chat with me, feel free to drop by the booth, of course. We are hanging out here at Autodesk University, or alternatively, you can find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter at builder_digital. And until next time, goodbye.